They met frequently and their bond began to grow so strong. Obinna was completely captivated by Amaka, who skillfully positioned herself as the ideal partner for him, capable of producing an heir who would one day take over from him. Obinna gradually warmed up to the idea, and one evening, over a lavish dinner, he asked her to be his wife, promising her a life of luxury and comfort. Amaka, without wasting any time, accepted to be his wife, her mind already plotting the next steps of her revenge against Amara, who had no idea that her action of the other night had bettered a revenge plan which would ruin her life forever. Amaka sat in her room, worried that things were not going as planned. Her younger sister was getting married in a few days, and Amaka could not understand why she was still single at her age. She remembered how she used to dress her younger sister up for school every morning, and now she was getting married before her. Is it that I am cursed? Amaka thought to herself as she heard a loud knock on her door. It was Anwuli, who had come to show her the dress that her tailor had just dropped off for her Ibanku, which is the Igbo traditional wedding. Sister Amaka, how do I look? Anwuli asked her sister, who could not contain her joy. Her precious little one, as she fondly called her, was getting married, and Amaka, although sad and worried, was so happy to see Anwuli all grown up and ready to be married. Anwuli's husband-to-be was a very wealthy and respectable man who met Anwuli during her graduation ceremony. He was the brother of one of Anwuli's friends who picked an interest in her during the graduation event. Would you blame him? Anwuli was such a beauty to behold. She was an extremely brilliant girl who graduated with a first-class honor in law and also emerged as the best graduating student from her department. She was so brilliant that she got admission into the university by the age of 14 on a scholarship that was applied to by thousands of people. Not only was she brilliant, she was also an exceptional cook who made the best dishes. Chiadika was captivated by her and had to make her his wife. Amaka could not help but compare herself to her younger sister, who seemed to have the life that she so desired. Amaka struggled most of her life as she was not as brilliant as Anwuli. She had so many carryovers in the university and even had to spend an extra year trying to clear all her outstanding papers. Unlike Anwuli, who was so homely and kind, Amaka was the complete opposite. She hated to cook and never saw a reason why a woman should cook for her home when she could have a chef or worse still, buy food from the local restaurant. The last time Amaka tried to cook a local delicacy to win the heart of a man, he ended up spending days in the toilet. So Amaka decided that it was best for her to stay away from men who expected her to cook as a wife. She was rather focused on attracting a rich man who would be able to pay for the services of a chef, as Amaka could not stand the thought of cooking and doing domestic chores in her husband's home. All the men who came her way were either poor or struggling, and Amaka did not hesitate to turn down their advances. She hoped to find a rich man at her sister's wedding, as Chiadika was not only rich but well connected. She picked up her phone and called her tailor to confirm if her dress was ready, but the tailor was not picking up her call. The wedding was 2 days away, and Amaka could not risk being let down by her tailor, so she hurriedly left her home to the tailor's shop to ensure that her dress was ready. When she arrived at the shop, she saw the tailor holding her fabric in her hand unsewn. Amaka could not hold back her anger. "Ireti, is this not my fabric?" she said, as Ireti quickly pulled out her scissors and began to cut the fabric. Amaka fumed in anger as she watched Ireti cut and sew her dress bit by bit. After several hours, a young woman walked into the shop and asked the tailor for her clothes. Ireti told the woman that her clothes were almost ready and that she would finish it up once she was done with the dress she was working on. The young woman fumed in anger as she grabbed on Amaka's dress and dragged it away from the sewing machine, ripping the dress in the process. Amaka landed her a dirty slap as they both jumped on each other and began to fight. They threw several punches as Amaka grabbed the woman's braids and began to pull with all of her strength. She held onto the braids firmly, pulling some braids out of its roots. Unable to bear the pain, the woman ran away from the scene, promising to teach Amaka a lesson. You cannot do more than a dead rat, Amaka replied the angry woman as she turned to look at Ireti, who apologized for what she had done. After a few hours, Amaka's dress was finally ready. Amaka packed up the dress and headed home. It was already dark, so she boarded a bike and headed straight for her house as she promised to help her mother, labeled the wedding souvenirs, and had to be home soon. They drove for a few minutes and approached a lonely road that led to Amaka's house. A car seemed to be driving aggressively towards them, and Amaka, fearing for their safety, told the bike man to hasten his speed. She looked to see who it was and saw the woman she fought a few hours ago. In that moment, Amaka knew that she was in grave danger. The angry woman chased them for a few minutes as the bike man drove at the top of his speed. "Madam, we go die this night though," he said to Amaka, who rebuked his statement. Just as they were about making a turn, the angry woman caught up with them and hit them off the road. She reversed her car and drove up before anyone caught sight of her. Amaka struggled for her life as she managed to yell out for help. A young man heard her cry and rushed to help her to the hospital, where she finally passed out. Unfortunately, the bike rider did not survive as he hit his head on a stone and died instantly. Amaka woke up a few hours later to realize that her face had been badly bruised. She also had a minor dislocation and was unable to move her right leg. Her doctor, Dr. Ike, came into the room to inform her that she was lucky to still be alive. He told her that the minor dislocation in her leg would be fixed in a few days. However, the bruise on her face was going to take months to heal. He told Amaka that she had to remain in the hospital for a few weeks for the nurses to monitor the scar to avoid any form of infection. Amaka could not believe her ears. Her sister's long-awaited wedding was only a few hours away, and she could not believe that she was going to be absent. Her plans of meeting her rich husband at the wedding was now distant from reality, and Amaka burst out in tears at the thought of this. Dr. Ike, seeing her in distress, tried to console her. "Amaka," he said gently, "sometimes life has a way of redirecting us when we least expect it. Take this time to heal, both physically and emotionally." Amaka nodded, though her heart was heavy. As she sat there, she reflected on everything that happened and vowed to take revenge. Her sister walked into the room and met the doctor, who updated her on her sister's condition. Anwuli stood next to her sister, reassuring her that everything would be fine. Amaka could not have asked for a better sister. She could see the worry in Anwuli's eyes as she offered to sleep by her side all night. "Anwuli, your wedding is tomorrow and you need to be well rested for the occasion. You should return home and sleep, as I promised to look after myself. I am sorry I won't be there by your side. Just know that I'll be there in spirit." Tears dropped from Anwuli's eyes as she looked at her sister's face, which was now badly scarred. She spent a few minutes at the hospital and returned home to rest for the wedding. The next morning, Amaka's friend Onyi came to the hospital and was so furious to hear all that had happened. She told Amaka that they had to find the woman who put her in this condition to ensure that they make her pay. Amaka told Onyi that her tailor Ireti knew who the woman was, as that was where she met her. Onyi promised to do her investigations to find out who this woman was and where she lived. She spent a few hours with Amaka and was told to leave by the nurses, as visiting hours had now come to an end. The next day, Onyi returned and informed Amaka that the woman behind her accident was the wife of Obinna Ode, an oil tycoon who was well known for his vast wealth. He was the youngest billionaire in the state, rumored to own several companies and oil wells around the country. His wife Amara was a troublesome woman who went around oppressing people because she believed that her husband's money could get her out of any trouble. Rumor has it that Obinaude was in search of another wife as his wife Amara failed to give him a child. Amaka was so delighted to hear this. She plotted her revenge on how she would win Obinaude's heart. He was obviously rich and everything she had ever wanted in a man. Amaka was willing to become his second wife to teach his wife Amara a lesson. She was, however, concerned that Obinaude would not find her attractive because of the scar on her face. "I would use makeup," she said to her friend Onyi, who told her that she had a plan. Onyi informed Amaka of a very powerful prophet who could make anything happen. She told Amaka that the prophet can help her remove the scar on her face and even make her path cross with that of Obinaude. Amaka was glad to hear the news. She was, however, skeptical of the prophet's powers, but Onyi convinced her that there was nothing diabolical about the prophet, whose powers were natural as he was born with them. Later that day, Dr. Ike walked into her room to check on her scars. "They are healing beautifully," he said to Amaka, who told him that she wanted to be discharged. Dr. Ike warned her against doing so, but Amaka was so adamant as she could not wait to put her plans in motion. Dr. Ike, seeing her persistence, told her that he would only agree to discharge her if she permits him to drop by her house once in a while to check on the scar, and Amaka agreed because she was so desperate to leave the hospital. Her discharge papers were processed and Amaka left the hospital after a few days of being admitted. The dislocation on her leg had gone and all Amaka was worried about was the scar on her face. She arrived home and met her mother, who was preparing to come visit her at the hospital. "How are you, my daughter?" she asked, as Amaka assured her mother that she was fine. She walked into her room, her mind flooded with the thoughts of her sweet revenge. Amaka waited patiently till the next morning and headed to Onyi's house. They had made plans to visit the prophet that morning, but for some reason, heavy rain began to fall with scary thunderclaps that made it impossible for them to visit the prophet. Later that evening, when Amaka returned home, she met Dr. Ike, who had been waiting for her for hours. He could tell that something serious was bothering Amaka and convinced her to talk to him, but Amaka, unable to divulge her plans, assured him that she had everything under control. Dr. Ike found it hard to believe, but decided not to press further as he examined her scars and left her home. Amaka retired to bed and heard a knock on her door. It was her mother, who looked terrified. She told Amaka that she had a terrifying dream where her entire body was rotten and maggots were eating deep into her skin. She told Amaka to remain home the next day to fast and pray to God to avert the plans of the evil ones, but Amaka informed her mother that she already had something planned with her friend Onyi. "You and this your friend Onyi, you know I do not like her around you," she said to Amaka, who assured her mother that Onyi was not a bad friend as she assumed. Her mother returned to her bed to sleep as Amaka stayed up awake, unable to shake off her mother's dream from her mind. By morning, Onyi came to Amaka's house to pick her up. Amaka told her of her mother's dream and Onyi convinced her that dreams were a reflection of one's fears. She assured Amaka that her prophet was not an evil man as she had consulted him on several occasions and nothing evil had happened to her. Trusting her friend Onyi, Amaka followed her to go meet her prophet, who seemed to know why she came without her even speaking. He handed her his special miracle soap, which she was to use to wash her face every night for 7 nights, saying that after the 7th night, her scars would be gone. He also told Amaka to visit a certain restaurant on the 8th day by 4 in the evening and that she will meet Obinaude, who will be captivated by her. He told Amaka that once her wishes have been granted, she should buy an alcoholic gin and 10 candles to appreciate him for his help, and Amaka was so pleased to hear this. She returned home and washed her face with the soap on the first night. Nothing seemed to have changed, but Amaka did not bother herself as she went off to bed, looking forward to the seventh night. Each night that passed, Amaka washed her face diligently with the soap. On the seventh night, however, she realized that the blisters had reduced but not completely. She then laid on her bed to sleep. When she felt a sensation on her face, she rushed to the mirror and realized that her skin was now as smooth as that of a baby. Amaka was so delighted to have her beautiful face back. Her scars had miraculously disappeared, and she jumped up excitedly as she looked forward to her meeting with Obinaude. By morning, her mother saw how smooth her face was and could not believe her eyes. "Your scars have disappeared," she said to Amaka, who revealed to her that it was a miracle. She said that she fasted and prayed and woke up this morning to realize that the Lord had healed her scars. Her mother was so excited that she knelt down and thanked God for healing her daughter. It was the 8th day, and Amaka could not wait to finally meet Obinaude. She waited patiently till evening and headed straight for the restaurant. She sat there patiently, and to her surprise, Obinaude walked into the restaurant and approached her table. "Good evening, beautiful. Mind if I join you?" Obina said to Amaka, who smiled gracefully, trying to hide her excitement. "Of course, please have a seat," she said to Obina, who sat across from her. Obina and Amaka connected instantly as they conversed like people who had known themselves for a very long time. Obina found himself attracted to Amaka, whose beauty was irresistible. They met frequently, and their bond began to grow so strong. Obina was completely captivated by Amaka, who skillfully positioned herself as the ideal partner for him, capable of producing an heir who would one day take over from him. Obina gradually warmed up to the idea, and one evening, over a lavish dinner, he asked her to be his wife, promising her a life of luxury and comfort. Amaka, without wasting any time, accepted to be his wife, her mind already plotting the next steps of her revenge against Amara, who had no idea that her action of the other night had bettered a revenge plan which would ruin her life forever. Not long afterwards, Obina approached Amaka's family to declare his intention to marry her. Her family did not seem comfortable with her choice of a husband, knowing that he was already married to another woman. Amaka's sister Anwule spoke to her about her choice, and Amaka informed her that her mind had already been made up. Amaka had no problem being a second wife and made this known to her family, who had no other option but to accept her choice. A date was then set for her traditional wedding, and the news spread around, reaching the ears of his wife Amara, who never knew that her husband was seeing another woman talk more of getting married to her. On the morning of their traditional wedding, Amara stormed Amaka's home, requesting to see the woman who was bold enough to marry her husband. She yelled at the top of her voice, daring the woman to stand before her, and Amaka could not wait to see the look on Amara's face when she realizes that her husband was getting married to the same woman that she almost killed. Amaka walked out of her house majestically as she stood face to face with Amara, who opened her eyes in shock to realize that the woman her husband was getting married to was Amaka. Her heart began to beat so fast as this revelation caught her off guard. "Amaka," Amara said, her voice trembling with a mix of shock and anger. "How dare you?" Amaka smiled, enjoying the look on Amara's face. "Yes, it's me. And now you see how life works, don't you? You tried to kill me, and now I'm going to be your husband's second wife." Amara's eyes were now full of rage. "You won't get away with this, Amaka. I will make sure of it," she said as she began to walk away. Amaka laughed at her mockingly as she walked her walk. Immediately, Obina arrived and caught his wife standing in Amaka's home. "What is going on here?" he asked as Amara turned to him and said that he can't marry Amaka because her purpose of marrying him was to spite her. Obinna looked at Amara with disdain and said to her that she had no say in who he chooses to marry, and that the earlier she realizes this, the better for her. Amara was so heartbroken. She could not believe that the man who she had been with for over 10 years would say such a thing to her without considering her feelings. She left their presence shattered as she could not stand to watch her husband marry another woman. Amaka could not contain her joy. Her revenge filled her with satisfaction as she happily got married to Obinna and moved into his mansion as his wife. As time went on, she got pregnant and her husband bought her a very expensive wristwatch to celebrate the good news. Her pregnancy solidified her position in her husband's life, and Amaka, knowing that she now had the heart of her husband in her palms, requested that his first wife Amara be sent away from the mansion as she felt unsafe and uncomfortable with her around. And Obinna, without any hesitation, sent his first wife away. Amaka basked in her newfound power and wealth. She capitalized on her husband's connections to grow her influence and amass so much wealth for herself. Amaka could not believe how easily her prayers were answered. She watched as her chefs served her food in her mansion and remembered how she wished for a life like this, where she did not have to lift a finger to do anything in her husband's home. She bought the 10 candles and a bottle of gin that the prophet had requested, and her friend Onyi offered to help her deliver the items to the prophet, owing to the fact that she was pregnant. One night, as Amaka was about to go to bed, she noticed a very sharp pain in her stomach. Her husband rushed her to the hospital, and after several hours of painful labor, she lost the baby. This occurrence broke Amaka, who looked forward to holding her son in her arms. Her husband Obinna, seeing the pain in her eyes, comforted her as he assured her that everything would be fine. Amaka's heart was so heavy as she watched her milk overflow with no baby to latch on it. She walked into her baby's nursery and saw all the beautiful items she had picked out for her son, who died even before he was born. Amaka prayed to God to give her another child because the pain was too much to bear. Before she knew what was happening, she got pregnant again. This was a few weeks after her painful stillbirth, and Amaka could not believe her eyes. She broke the news to her husband, who bought her an expensive necklace to celebrate the fantastic news. It was another boy, and Amaka could not contain her joy. She began to glow again and was at the peak of her happiness, believing that she now had everything that she ever wanted. However, this was not the case, as strange things began to happen to her. She woke up one night oozing of alcohol and wondered who could have spilled the alcohol on her body. She was heavily pregnant and knew that she hadn't taken alcohol in months. Her husband Obinna woke up to the strong smell of alcohol. He was so furious and asked why she would ever think of drinking any form of alcohol, knowing that she was pregnant. Amaka tried to explain to him, but Obinna cautioned her that if anything happened to the pregnancy, he would hold her responsible. Amaka sat there confused as she knew that she had not taken any form of alcohol in months. Morning came and Amaka could not stop thinking about the strange incident that happened the previous night. She spoke to her friend Onyi, who told her that what happened might be an attack from Amara, who was trying to put confusion between her husband and herself. That's true, Amaka said as she began to think of what to do. She paid Amara a visit to confront her for trying to cause problems in her marriage. Amara was so shocked to see Amaka in her home. "What are you doing here?" she asked angrily as Amaka accused her of trying to sabotage her marriage with Obinna. Amara opened her eyes in disbelief as she told Amaka that she had no interest in her miserable life. "You took everything from me. Why would I waste my time trying to ruin something that's already cursed?" she said as she banged her door to her face, leaving Amaka confused. Amaka was not expecting such a response. She returned home angrily and could not stop thinking about her encounter with Amara. Night came, and Amaka noticed a small dark spot on her face. She thought it was a blemish and ignored it at first. However, the spot grew larger and more pronounced as each day passed. Amaka used her makeup to conceal the blemish on her face. She also tried several remedies, but nothing seemed to work as the spot continued to spread, turning into a huge scar on her face. Desperate to find a solution, Amaka sought the help of the prophet, who informed her that his ancestors were behind the alcohol incident as well as the return of her scar. He said to her that Amaka brought the calamity upon herself by failing to keep to her own end of the bargain. Amaka looked at him confused as she asked what bargain he was talking about, and the prophet reminded her of his request of 10 candles and a bottle of gin. Amaka looked at him confused because she remembered giving her friend Onyi the items to give to the prophet a while ago. Shocked and confused, Amaka confronted Onyi, who told her that she deserved to die and rot in hell. Amaka could not believe her ears as Onyi told her that she never planned on giving the items to the prophet because she knew the consequences of failing to do so. Amaka stared blankly at Onyi and asked why she would do such a thing to her, and Onyi revealed that she hated Amaka with every fiber in her body. Whilst Amaka saw Onyi as a friend, Onyi for a very long time never considered Amaka a friend. What had happened was that a long time ago, Onyi asked Amaka for some money to buy some medication for her sick mother. Amaka told Onyi that she had no money, so Onyi moved around, begging everyone she could ever think of, but no one was willing to give her the money. So she approached one of her uncles, who took advantage of her before giving her the money that she asked. By the time Onyi got the medication for her mother, she realized that her mother had died. Onyi was so devastated and blamed herself for the death of her mother. If only I ran faster, Mama would not have died, she said to herself as she burst out in tears and begged her mother to come back to life. Unable to withstand the sadness that she felt, she decided to visit Amaka to break the bad news to her. When she saw Amaka counting a huge sum of money in her room, Onyi was so furious to realize that her friend had some money all along but refused to give to her, even when she knew that her mother's life was at stake. She never forgave Amaka and decided never to confront her. Rather, she pretended to be friends with Amaka so as to find an opportunity to destroy her life completely. So, when Amaka gave her the candles and the gin to give to the prophet, Onyi saw it as an opportunity to actualize her own revenge. Amaka was so shocked to hear this. She remembered the exact day this happened and told Onyi that the money that she saw belonged to her mother, who walked into her room that evening and gave her the money to count to confirm if it was complete. The money belonged to the women of her mother's church who saved their money with her. They accused Amaka's mother of using their money to take care of her family because of how well they were doing at the time. So, they requested for their money back in full, threatening that if the money was not produced, her mother would face the entire church and be excommunicated for stealing. Onyi, on hearing this, began to regret her actions. She could not believe that all these years she had harbored a grudge for her friend, who clearly was not in the wrong. She wished she confronted her sooner, as this would have cleared the air and not fostered resentment in her heart. Onyi apologized to Amaka as they both quickly rushed to the prophet to deliver the said items. They arrived at the prophet's house and met Amaka's husband Obinna, who was holding the necklace that he got for Amaka when she took in for the second time. Amaka opened her eyes confused as she asked her husband what he was doing there, holding her necklace, and Obinna looked at her angrily, calling her a wicked soul. He asked if Amaka ever thought that she would have a moment of peace in her life. Amaka stood there as she watched her husband speak to her with so much disdain. What did I do? Amaka asked, as her husband accused her of killing his only brother Obiora. Amaka's eyes opened in shock, as she never knew that Obinna was Obiora's brother. It happened so many years ago, when Obiora met Amaka in the university and fell deeply in love with her. Amaka at the time was a very calm and humble girl. They dated for 2 years, and Amaka's taste in men began to change. She yearned for the good life, and since Obiora was only a student, she started to cheat on him with richer men outside of school. She tried so hard to hide her sneaky life from Obiora, who began to suspect that Amaka was into a certain lifestyle that he detested. So on one night, Amaka was at Obiora's house when she suddenly told him that she was leaving. Obiora, seeing that it was almost midnight, insisted that she stays back because it was not safe. Amaka then went into the kitchen and brought a cup of juice for Obiora, who drank the juice, not knowing that Amaka put a substance in the drink to enable her leave to meet up with her rich boyfriend. By morning, his friends came to his room and realized that he was dead. Amaka, on hearing the news, denied ever being in his room that night. After a fruitless investigation, the case was swept under the carpet, and Amaka continued to live her life as if nothing had happened. What she did not know was that his old mother slumped and died a few days after burying her son. Obinna buried his brother and mother in a space of 1 week and decided to investigate the cause of his brother's death. He was then told that his brother's girlfriend Amaka killed Obiora for her selfish desires. Amaka burst out in tears as she never knew the gravity of what she had done. She pleaded for Obinna's forgiveness, and Obinna told her that it was already too late, as he had already taken his own pound of flesh. He told her never to come close to his home again. Amaka pleaded with him and asked what would happen to their baby, and Obinna looked her in the eyes and said that the baby was not his. Amaka shone her eyes in shock as she tried to understand what he was talking about. Obinna then revealed to her that all the while she had been sleeping with another man, thinking that it was him. He paid a man who had a similar build as him to get her pregnant so that he can make her lose the pregnancies and go through so much pain and torment. It was then that Amaka understood why Obinna told her that he enjoyed sleeping with his woman in silence and complete darkness. She could not believe that she had been sleeping with another man, thinking that it was her husband. Amaka stood there frozen as she felt a watery substance pour down her legs. Her baby was gone, and Amaka could feel her heart shatter into a million pieces. Amaka looked straight at Obinna, who held up her necklace and told her that all the gifts he had ever given to her were the channels he used to inflict pain on her. Amaka staggered as she left the prophet's home with her friend Oni. She could not believe that her revenge for Amara put her in the hands of her greatest enemy, who she never knew existed till now. Amaka, for all these months, believed that Obinna chased his wife away because of how much he loved her. What she did not know was that Amara had been cheating on Obinna with several men for so many years. He already made up his mind to send her away, so when Amaka requested for it, he approved her request without thinking twice. Amaka was so lost and broken. She could not believe that the man who showered her with so much love was the same man behind her tears and torment. In that moment, Amaka regretted everything that she had ever done. Her pregnancy was gone, and her scar returned worse than it was before, so Amaka had to spend several weeks in the hospital. Dr. Ike took good care of her and cheered her up whenever she was in a bad mood. He took good care of her wound, which healed completely after several months. Finally, Amaka was discharged from the hospital, and Dr. Ike ensured that he checked up on her every evening. They soon became close, and not long afterwards, Dr. Ike asked her to marry him. Despite all the things that she went through in the past, he assured her that no one was perfect and that he loved her despite it all. That was how Amaka married Dr. Ike, who loved and cherished her with all of his heart. He was not a wealthy man, but his heart was rich, and Amaka lived the remaining of her life happy and in peace. Obinna, however, despite achieving his revenge, lived the remaining of his life regretting all the terrible things that he did. He thought the revenge would satisfy his spirit, but this was not the case, as he lived a life of misery, constantly reminded of the innocent lives that he took in the process. The lesson to be learned from this story is that our actions all have consequences. We should learn to think through every decision we take to avoid making decisions that will affect our lives and the lives of those around us. Learn the art of communicating because assumptions can lead to misunderstandings, which can damage lives and relationships. Do not dwell on vengeance because vengeance begets suffering, but learn to forgive as forgiveness has a way of promoting long lasting peace. I hope you enjoyed the story.
Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.